Hey guys. This is part 3 of What If Shikamaru was the main character. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 11, Chemicals and Snake, Training Ground 3. You're nominating us for the Chunin exams? Ino asked. But we've only been genin for 6 months. Are you sure we're ready? As ready as you'll ever be, Kakashi-sensei told us. Trust me. You'll be fine. Besides, Asuma and Kurenai also nominated their teams, so it's not as if you'll be the only newbie squirts there. All of you are passing material. The exams are nothing to worry about, Naruto grinned. Really? You're not just saying that to make us feel good? Well, compared to the other things you'll have to deal with, that's not very reassuring. I heard from places that it's the biggest one yet, said Ino. There will be lots of foreigners. Yes, about that. See, it's not the exams themselves that are particularly scary. It's your fellow competitors that you have to watch out for. Naruto scratched his head. Like who? Kakashi-sensei sighed. Do you remember that conversation we had about Sunagakure during our first C rank? I frowned. Are you suspecting that Suna will use these Chunin exams to start something? That plan seems a bit too blatantly obvious to succeed. Something like that, yes, Kakashi-sensei nodded. So why are we being entered then? I asked immediately. Kakashi-sensei gave me a strange look. Of course you would ask something like that. I returned it with a look of my own. So you do know something. What? Instead of answering my question directly, he said, either way, we can't cancel the exams, or else we'll look weak in front of spectators and other villagers. The show must go on. I'm not allowed to tell you any more than that. They can't know that we know what they're up to. More importantly, don't trust anyone, not even your former classmates, not even the proctors, and least of all the friendly strangers. It is only you and your team in something like this. Judge them the same way you judge me, and you should be fine. Be careful. Keep each other safe. Watch out for the councilman. I raised an eyebrow. The councilman? And you think we can go up against that? Ino blurted. Kakashi's eyelid flickered for a moment. I believe you'll live, yes? All right. Naruto jumped up and cheered. We'll kick everyone's butts and blow this stupid test out of the water. And then we'll be Chunin before you know it, sensei. You can count on us. Right, guys? I couldn't help but smile. At the risk of sounding like my dad, it would be troublesome to have to go through something like this more than once. Don't worry, sensei. We'll live. It would be embarrassing if we didn't pass. Ino shook her head. I refuse to have given up all of my cool outfits for nothing. She glared at Kakashi-sensei pointedly. But you look cute in baggy army pants, he said innocently. Or at least, Lee seems to think so. Don't you dare say a word, Ino fumed. And no orange, Naruto. The Chunin exams, Phase 1. Shirmasa did not regard himself as a normally happy man. Today, he was even less happy than normal. He had a million better things to do than to proctor a bunch of stuck-up genin brats who thought that they were good enough for Chunin, least of all the stupid rookies who all also happened to be clan heirs. His sentiment mirrored that of the rest of the room. Everyone absolutely hated them. He had had to work for his position as Jonin, damn it, and here these cute and naive little things thought they could just waltz in and out all because they were born with weird-ass eyes or something similar, which was so not fair. Most people with screwy genetics got cancer or cystic fibrosis or some shit, not actual superpowers. Now, that in itself was fine. He could have dealt with that. But then the Sandaime had pulled him aside and told him something about making a test that those kids could pass. What the hell, man? All right, so he was intending for them to pass just so they could show them off, and not because he was going to actually make them Chunin, which was a little bit better, but still. Stupid entitled rich brats. He couldn't help but hate them, even though he knew exactly what they were here for, because a little part of him couldn't bear to think of the fact that those rookies might actually have the raw talent to pass, even without extra help. At least he'd be able to have his share of fun terrorizing them before he booted them off to the second phase. This particular room had been chosen because it had no air conditioning. Add that to the sweltering Konoha heat, and the little brats would be crying in no time. He and the other proctors, of course, were all carrying their own spray bottle fans, none of which would be shared with the genin. And just to tack on insult to injury for the genin who were fluent in either water or air jutsu. Listen up, maggots! He screamed, imitating Ibiki. Hey, it worked. There will be absolutely no fighting in this phase of the exam. Yes, you smug little dickwad from the Sound Village, I am talking to you. So wipe that smirk off your face. or I will personally come over there and do it for you. No taijutsu, genjutsu, ninjutsu, or anything else with jutsu tacked onto the end, period. If we catch you using anything besides your pencils, brains, and piece of paper, you are disqualified. Am I understood, maggots? Heh. No fighting? The little dickwad muttered to his friends. What a bunch of wimps. This will be easier than I thought. Suddenly, he let out a high-pitched shriek, and holy shit, he didn't think it was possible for a post-pubescent boy to scream that high. Something bit me. Good job, girl, he grinned, patting his mouse summon. That guy tasted disgusting, his summon told him. Ah, does he not wash like a good boy should? He cooed sarcastically. He tasted like chemicals and snake, the mouse corrected. It was nasty. I'll give you some extra high-quality cheese later, he promised. You better. The summon disappeared in a puff of smoke. The rest of the room was still snickering at the now humiliated dickwad. Good. He always liked taking those types of overconfident bastards down a peg or 10. He leveled a challenging glare at the 9 rookie genin, praying silently that they'd do something like that, too, just so he could embarrass them, but they all remained silent. Sure sigh. No one in the room was going to fall for the same bait twice. Now listen carefully, you disgusting grubs. I'm only going to tell you the instructions once, so don't you dare ask me again. If you miss what I'm saying, then oh well. Too bad, so sad. No questions, got it? I don't have time for your fly-shit brains. Now, Sakura gripped her pencil tightly as she waited for the tests to be distributed. None of the competition looked friendly. The kid from Sand least of all. She really did not like that guy. The way he stared did not suit her well. Even without that weird Kabuto guy's advice, she would have avoided him anyway. Still, she had gotten some pretty interesting information from him. For example, Ino, Shikamaru, and even Naruto had really high scores, same as Sasuke, for the elemental ninjutsu category in the skill set diagram. She had been extremely surprised at that, especially since no one in her team knew any. Although, to be fair, her team had the highest genjutsu scores out of all the rookie genin, so it was likely just a matter of focus for their respective Jonin sensei. Sakura doubted she had the chakra to use too much elemental ninjutsu anyway. Speaking of Ino and Naruto, Kurenai sensei had informed her that the other 2 rookie teams were both entered, but she hadn't noticed Ino there. Or Naruto. There was no way she could have missed his neon orange jumpsuit. Had they backed out? Neither Ino nor Naruto were the types to give up like that. She peered over the cubicles again, trying to find either of them one last time. No luck. Not a spot of orange, or even purple. She did see Lee in his ugly green jumpsuit though, and hastily ducked back down before he spotted her and did something stupid that would get both of them kicked out. That would be really bad. Sasuke-kun was there though, so that was a small comfort. Now listen up, bitches, the really angry-sounding proctor yelled. You should all have a piece of paper in front of you now. Don't you fucking dare turn it over until we tell you to, or you fail. And stop trying to read through the back of the paper. That's right, I'm watching you, you little shits. There was some uncomfortable shuffling as several people jerked back upright. You have 1 hour. If you don't finish your test before time is up, you fail. If you get the answers wrong, you fail. If you cheat off someone from a different team, you fail. If you are caught trying to communicate with your teammates, you fail. And if anyone in your team fails, you also fail. Wait, what? Sakura gasped. You can't be serious. She opened her mouth to protest, but one murderous glare from Shur-san had her snapping it shut again, and she resorted to worriedly searching the room for Kiba and Shino instead. All the teams had been pried apart and separated in the beginning when they were given their seating arrangements, and now they were saying that this whole thing was graded by team? Shur-san paced back and forth across the aisles, his heavy boots leaving loud and visible indents in the wooden floorboards. The instructions are written on your test, and if you're too stupid to understand them, then don't you dare come whining to us. You're supposed to be Chunin level already, so show us that you are, because I don't take very kindly to having my precious time wasted, understood? Yes, sir! The crowd of genin chorused. If that's all, then begin. Sakura flipped over her sheet and was met with a single line of text. Solve this code. The key is 872AF64. Underneath it was a large blank space, presumably where the answer was supposed to go. What? Sakura thought, flipping the paper back over, trying to see if there was something that she had missed on the other side the first time around. Where's the code? She was about to raise her hand to ask about it, when someone behind her raised his. Excuse me, sir, but you didn't give me a code to solve. Thwack, I said no. Fucking questions! The head proctor roared, brandishing a kunai. Sakura turned behind her to look, as did some other people in her row. A dagger had embedded itself in the front of the person's cubicle board. Had it not been stopped by its own hilt, the weapon surely would have found its mark in the middle of the question asker's head. Sakura quietly withdrew her trembling hand and stared hopelessly back down at her sheet. How do you solve a code, when there is no code to solve? I thought. There's only a key. I looked around. At least I wasn't the only one. Judging from the amount of people who are actually working on this thing compared to the amount of people who are just staring confusedly, I'm guessing about 2/3 of the room doesn't have the code, either. There was a rustle of paper, and the person beside me held up his paper to the light, possibly to test for invisible ink. There was a muffled curse, and he slammed it back down onto his desk again. Now that was odd. His test paper had been completely blank. Not even a code or a key. Not that 7229 CCR helped me anymore. I looked around at the room one more time. That was when an idea came to me. What if the codes and keys, and blank papers, were all distributed separately around the room? But then how would I find the particular code that this key was for among all the test takers in the room? Unless, I narrowed my eyes, and quickly scanned the room for my teammates. Ino had her head down, working furiously, and Naruto was scratching his head. Next teammate. Neither Sakura nor Kiba were working, while Shino was buzzing agitatedly. And then Team 9 Guy's team. Niji and Tenten were not working, while Lee was crying hopelessly, holding a snapped pencil in his hand. Team 10, Hinata and Sasuke were both not working, while Choji was frantically writing away at his paper. The Sand team, the same one we had met during our first C rank, also had only one person, the youngest kid, working, while the other two just sat there. And then the team of the guy with glasses that had approached the other rookies with those strange cards before, be careful around him. Team training is supposed to be private, and yet he somehow knows your skill set, the same thing. Only one person was working. The sound team, that had been called out earlier, was in a similar situation, too. It's not just a coincidence that only 1/3 of the room, or, more specifically, 1/3 of each 3-man cell, is working. One person has a key, one person has a code, and one person has a blank piece of paper. It's also unlikely that this pattern is random, otherwise it would take too long for anything to get done. The codes and their corresponding keys are confined to the same team, that is, each code key blank set has been distributed among only one team. I replayed the head proctor's instructions inside my head. We have to solve the problem, which is, in this case, deciphering the code. We are not allowed to cheat off other teams, but we only fail if we get caught communicating with our own. And the whole team fails if one member either doesn't get the answer or cheats poorly. I sat up and snorted to myself. Ha! This was just typical Kakashi-sensei speak. Look underneath the underneath. This test wasn't about code breaking, not if keys were floating around 1/3 of the room. It was about being able to piece together information from many remote sources and communicating your findings to the rest of the field before your teammates got desperate and did something stupid. Just like how Tora prepared us for future tracking/capturing missions, this was a mock intelligence mission preparing us for the real deal. When large areas have to be covered in a short amount of time by limited personnel, teams have to split up and take different parts. And if the area is full of enemies, that is, the rival teams and our proctors, we might not be able to regroup, so being able to send messages remotely was an important skill. Important pieces of information are rarely ever kept in one piece, for security reasons. One of the major jobs of ANBU Intelligence HQ was to put together all the various bits and pieces brought back by the scouts so they could be analyzed in full. Hand signs and various signals, obviously, could be spotted by the proctors, even if they didn't know what it meant. Knocking Morse code or other auditory means of communication were also out of the question. I looked around at the examiners, wondering just what I could get away with. Ino frowned down at the paper. This is ridiculous, she thought. This code is way too long to brute force in only 1 hour. Suddenly, she felt frozen, like she couldn't move. Then her arms started moving against her mind, and began writing on the paper. Oh. It was just Shikamaru. She relaxed, and let her hand move seemingly according to its own will. This entire room is covered in shadows thanks to all the cubicles, she thought. I can't even see his shadow. 7229 CCR. Perfect, Ino smirked, as she resumed her work. I might not be a bookworm like Sakura, but if there's one thing I know how to do, it's a standard decryption. Stay calm and don't screw up, Naruto. I'll give you the answers soon enough. Sasuke grinned when he finally saw Hinata activate her Byakugan and start writing. Factor in the Sharingan, and bingo. He let his arm movements copy hers, and soon words were forming on his paper. And Choji's sitting across from me, too. That works out perfectly. Otherwise, it would have been hard to hypnotize people when they're not making direct eye contact. Hang in there, Lee, Tenten thought. Niji's almost done deciphering the code. I'll get the answers to you soon enough. Bugs are so weird, Kiba thought, tracing out the words the Kakachu were forming on the paper. But at least they're useful. Temari hadn't expected Gaara to help either her or Kankuro, so it came as a mildly pleasant surprise when the sand came and started scratching out the words on her paper. Logically, she knew Gaara was only doing that because he still needed them, but something was better than nothing. If only that bloody smell could go away, this might actually turn out to be a nice day. Is that girl actually sleeping during this test? Sure thought furiously. Oh. Never mind. She's a Yamanaka. Damn. That's one thing we can't actually prove. And shit, this whole place is covered with shadows, huh? That's another thing we can't prove. Effing hell. Who was the idiot who thought cubicles would be a good idea? Oh, right. That was me. Haha, it's so stupid that we can't call them out. Seriously. If I was doing this, I'd nail the two Hyuga kids. Those bulging veins on your temples are super obvious. Hello? And then that girl with the ninja wire tied to her fingers. And then those damn Kakachu. And the Sharingan boy. And hell, even that brat with the sand. And what the hell, I should just kick out that team from Sound too, just because I know that they're cheating. They're a new village. No one from a new village makes it through that easily. He felt kind of bad for that Kabuto kid though. This was what, the 6th? 7th? Time he'd be taking the test? What a tryhard. Examinee number 94. You fail. I wasn't, ACK, idiot. You think we don't know what hand signs look like? Number 17. Take your team and get out of here. Number 112, 65, and 71. You also fail. Save your excuses. I saw you peeking around that cubicle as clear as day. Not that it would have helped the stupid bastard. Every team had been given a different message, and he was looking forward to booting out the teams that had cheated successfully when time was up. Idiots. I sighed, and leaned back in my chair. That was easy. I glanced around the room again, using the rest of my time here to observe the rest of the competitors. I focused mainly on the sand teams, as Kakashi-sensei had warned, but there was something about the one Konoha team in purple that was just off. Though we hadn't talked to him directly, I had managed to get a glimpse of the cards he was showing off to our former classmates. The level of detail in those skill reports. Since when did a genin have that sort of power? How could he have gotten his hands on those statistics? I could deal with the guy knowing how many missions everyone had gone on. Though legally the mission record room files were only open to Chunin level paper pushers and up, it was all too easy for an overly curious genin to pick the lock. Hell, Kakashi-sensei had sent us in there on mock missions once or twice before. And the ninjutsu, fine, that could be inferred based on clan jutsu and our sensei. But specific number rankings? Elemental natures? The names of the techniques we'd been taught? That sort of knowledge wasn't recorded at all past the academy. No self-respecting ninja village left a list of their employees' skills out for the world to see. One break-in, and it would all be over. The only people who should have known our skill sets, besides our parents, would be Kakashi-sensei. And I was fairly certain he wasn't the type to make that sort of information about us known to the general public, seeing how secretive and antisocial he normally was about everything. So either he was amazingly good at analyzing skill stats from mere gossip alone, or there was a third party going around, spying on teams and analyzing skill sets. Crap. I've got to tell someone about this. Luckily for me, then, that none of the Chunin proctors in the room were actually Chunin. This is so fun, Kakashi thought from underneath his henge. I never got to do this when I was a Chunin. Not that he couldn't be intimidating as a 6-year-old, but coordinating multi-village events was difficult when they were all at war. Number 207. You fail. Of course, the fact that this exam involved crazy homicidal maniacs and scheming enemy villages diminished his joy just a little bit. But Kakashi pushed down the ugly thoughts and kept scanning the room. Things were going fine. His cute little students were doing well, as expected. All the other proctors, including the A and B replacements, were none the wiser of his presence. Which was good. He'd consider himself seriously out of practice if he got caught. And statistically speaking, if what the Sandame had told him about Danzo Shimura was true, then feigning ignorance was the optimal choice to take. There was a good chance that they would make it through if he just let them be. On the other hand, throwing a wrench into the Hokage's, he hoped, well-crafted plans now would pretty much ensure that everyone depending on it would die, his students included, if they got caught in the crossfire. With the way the world was quickly devolving into what could possibly be yet another war, he couldn't afford to behave irrationally right now. He had half a mind to just toss his instructions to the wind and just fail them right then and there. He seriously didn't care if he was allowed to stalk them for the entire duration of the test. Nor did he care that they really were skilled enough to stand up to all the other genin. Letting them be used as pawns in some massive political scheme was just unbearable to him. It didn't matter how good the kids were, they were too young to get mixed up in this stuff. All of them were too young to be involved in the schemes of the higher powers. But what did he know about freedom? He had been enslaved to his work since the day he was born. Tsukumo Hotaki had been a kind man, but he hadn't had the slightest clue about how to raise a child all by himself. Kakashi had grown up around raw steel and training dummies, not board books and stuffed animals. The running joke among shinobi circles about letting babies' teeth on kunai had been an occasional reality, in his case. Speaking of which, Jiraiya probably still had some of those old pictures of him lying around, the first, last, and only photographs of him without his mask that hadn't had coffee accidentally spilled on them. It all came back to Konoha, an object of loyalty that they hadn't even been allowed to choose. For better or for worse, your friends were all of the shinobi of Konoha, not just the ones you had emotional ties to. When Tsukumo had abandoned his mission to save his teammates, he had neglected to consider the lives of his other comrades also depending on him, then. Since it was impossible to save everybody, the next step should have been to save as many people as one possibly could. Cost-benefit analysis, maximization of parameters. Basic stuff. Tsukumo Hotaki's mistake had been allowing emotion to cloud his judgment. He had chosen to save the 3 friends he could see instead of the hundreds he couldn't. That was what the higher powers said, but Kakashi knew better. His father's mistake hadn't been picking his team over the mission. His father's real mistake had been judging such poor shinobi, and even poorer friends, to be worth the slight to his honor. For all of his talent at discerning lies, the man had been a horrible judge of character, always too trusting of his supposed allies. Kakashi didn't give a damn if he was being selfish. He'd choose the 3 kids he knew over the thousands of faceless masses any day, because unlike his father's teammates, they wouldn't be leaving him to join said faceless masses. If they did, they'd end up just like his father's teammates, but they wouldn't, because they were smarter than that. A snort from beside him snapped him out of those depressing thoughts. He looked up. The Chunin Anbu sitting next to him sarcastically pointed at a Konoha team that was rather obviously cheating. The girl had a makeup kit out, and was clumsily using the tiny rounded mirror to draw the answers on her face. It might have worked, except Kakashi knew Tenten had never used makeup before in her life. But the method was interesting, unobtrusive, and not 100% stupid, unlike that one guy that had tried folding his test into a paper airplane to throw across the room with. So they were forced to let her get away with it. Less obvious than the Byakugan or Sharingan, at least. Red irises positively glowed in dim light, as Kakashi only knew too well, having spent hours at a time staring at a Bito's eye in his bathroom mirror. Really, the only team that was doing well, as in, cheating at a level that wasn't so hilariously genin, was the team of one Kabuto Yakushi. The idiot who had gone out of his way to make friends at a Chunin exam. Given the amount of times he had been through this thing, he should have realized by now that showing off to newbies was a bad idea in a place where everyone was out to cut each other's throats. Strange that no one had noticed this before, but then again, they normally had Chunin, not ultra-paranoid ex-NBU, proctoring this thing. Had circumstances not required him to actually physically be here this time around, he might have slipped under the radar like he always did every year. Maybe I'm worrying too much. Maybe he really is a ridiculously nice, noble, sympathetic, stupid young little thing who doesn't belong in the shinobi world and simply doesn't know it yet. But then right at that moment, Kakashi made eye contact with Shikamaru, and he felt his arm freeze, Kagemain no Jutsu. Now his arm, under Shikamaru's control, was tracing a few doodles around his clipboard. To anyone else, it would only look like a bored Chunin trying to pass the time while proctoring a boring exam. But any ANBU worth their salt would know this code. #0-3-4 CLASSIFIED SKILL RPORDS asterisk end message. Immediately, all of his former doubt flew away. That bastard. I almost felt sorry for him. This was bad. This was very, very bad. This was something Ibiki deserved to know. Chapter 12, Into the Maze. It wasn't the forest of death, but it was pretty damn close. Of all the training grounds Kakashi-sensei had released Tora into, this one had been the worst to navigate. From the top, it really did look beautiful. A giant canyon millions of years in the making, it had been carved out by a network of tributaries running from the nearby mountains. The little rivers had long since dried up, but the maze-like arrangement of clay street columns and tunnels that they had left behind were truly a sight to behold. Of course, once you were actually down in the canyon, it didn't look so pretty anymore. The canyon seemed to have changed from the last time we had been there. For one, there were a lot more roadblocks than before. Obviously, the main rock walls would have to remain the same, but from what I could see, several more earth jutsu formations had so conveniently wedged themselves between the most efficient routes out of the canyon, and most likely not in a random manner. No doubt it was meant to purposely drive the teams toward each other so we would all end up fighting one another at some point in time. Not only that, but there were also several wires strung across the walls here and there. I could barely see them. Had it not been for the slight glint of the sun, I doubted I would have noticed. As I looked more closely, however, I noticed all the walls were covered in them, as was the top of the maze. Trip wires then. I had no idea what they were connected to, but it probably wasn't going to be good. One thing was for sure. It would be unwise to attempt climbing over the top. There would be no easy way out here. After all, each phase of the Chunin exams were some sort of elimination round. It would be too easy if all everyone had to do was walk straight on through. This whole thing was a godforsaken death trap. I wouldn't be surprised if the ground itself was laced with explosives and trapdoor spike pits. Now, theoretically, I still could have avoided everyone and everything by simply tunneling my way underneath the whole thing. Ground traps could only go so deep. After some point I'd be unreachable. The rock bed might cause a little more trouble than regular soil, but it wasn't impossible. A simple headhunter jutsu, modified to allow air to come through so the user could remain hidden for an extended period of time, would have done the trick. Unfortunately, I hadn't yet figured out how to accommodate passengers, meaning I wouldn't be able to bring Ino and Naruto, either of whom were earth jutsu users, along. At least there were plenty of shadows around, thanks to the steep, narrow walls. And where the heck are your wristbands? The proctor growled at the team in front of us. One of the boys on the team fumbled for his. I swear, I have it right here. No, wait, I swear. Just give me a second, I forgot to put mine on. I just put it in my bag, hold on. His teammates turned on him. Don't tell me you lost yours, you idiot. Enough. The proctor snapped. Stop wasting our time. Next, wait, But he never got to finish his sentence, because by then 2 of the assistant proctors had already grabbed him and his teammates by the arms. We could still hear him protesting loudly, even after they had already hurled him back out the gate. Naruto swallowed a gulp of fear, and it was completely understandable why. If the guys from the first exam weren't messing around, then the guys in this part were 10 times as bad. Only those with sufficient intelligence and strength would survive this thing and have a shot at becoming Chunin. The first exam was meant to weed out the stupid. This one was meant to weed out the weak, right? Next. You lot. You look a bit small to be taking these exams, HM? Naruto wrinkled his nose a bit at the comment, but otherwise he stayed under control, and we calmly showed him our wristbands. Huh, he said. For a couple of rookie brats you seem unusually grown up compared to some of the other big kids I've seen today. We didn't rise to the bait. He rolled his eyes disappointedly, as if expecting us to throw a tantrum like a band of toddlers, but waved us past the registration bar to the antechamber of the canyon all the same. From there, our team surreptitiously tried to navigate to the edge of the crowd of waiting examinees, where we would be less likely to be noticed, trampled, or pickpocketed. In the end we were relegated to one of the corners, which wasn't as bad as it sounded, because now we only had to watch out on 2 sides and not 4. Not to mention, corners were a good vantage point of observation when in large crowds. Once the last few teams had finished registering for the second phase, Moto-san began the instructions lecture. In direct contrast to the proctor from the first exam, he made a point of speaking as quietly as possible. His voice was barely above whisper, which was massively unhelpful, seeing as we were standing outdoors in a very windy area that was completely filled with echo-causing geologic formations. These people, I swear. They just lived to make the rest of our lives difficult. And they were doing a very fine job of it, too, because it was actually working. It was obvious he was doing it on purpose, just to troll the rest of us. Making people nervous. Wondering, perhaps, if we had heard that last bit right. We were about to go into this nerve-wracking multi-day survival war zone, and he couldn't even be bothered to say the instructions clearly. He didn't care about any of us, and he was letting it show. Amazing, How something as simple as giving instructions in the wrong volume for a situation could ruin someone's day. Right. Listen up, infants, because I'm not speaking any louder than I have to, said Moto-san. Your job is to find your way through this canyon maze thing to that amazing tower all the way up there. He pointed. We looked. Well? He goaded. Pretty slick, huh? Mumbles. I can't hear you. He whispered again. What a hypocrite. Unimpressed silence. Hey, say something, all right? He said. Is that not the greatest damn tower in the history of the world or what? Some unwise loudmouth in the front of the crowd raised his hand. I just see a really decrepit one-story wooden shack with a cardboard sign saying this is the tower taped to it. Moto-san surreptitiously smacked him into silence. Shut up. We were supposed to have an actual tower in the Forest of Death, all right? But because of certain complications that are none of your beeswax, we had to move the test out here, and this place never had any towers, so that ranger station is the next best thing you can get, okay? Okay, sheesh. Ungrateful bratheads. A girl from the team next to us snorted out loud, and immediately all of the proctor's eyes swiveled onto her. Sorry, she tried, instead of taking the more mature route and shutting up like she was supposed to. It's just, I've never heard the phrase brathead before. I mean, I've heard brat and dickhead but not brathead, and, needless to say, her big rambling mouth got her team kicked out in less than half a second. It seemed that the proctors expected us all to have infinite sense of hearing and zero sense of humor, just like them. I couldn't help but wonder what those special little complications were, though I had a pretty good idea by now with all those hints Kakashi-sensei had been dropping earlier, even though I knew I was supposed to be focusing on this exam right now. Like I said before we were so rudely interrupted, you have to get to that tower all the way up there in, we'll make it 3 days. That's how long people can last without water, right? Whatever. Don't care. Just make sure you get up there with all 3 team members alive, because you might have a bit of difficulty finding a river in this thing. Water. Thank goodness we had enough hydration pills for the whole week, because Moto-san's last sentence had been a lie. A bit of difficulty. Ha! That canyon hadn't had a single drop of running water in it for the past few thousand years. All of its water came from our rainy season, which had ended months ago. Suddenly, I felt really sorry for the people who had only brought one canteen along and were banking on finding a river somewhere in here. Moto-san seemed to know this, too, because he was smiling like a cat that had gotten both the cream and the canary at the horrified faces of the unprepared genin. Oh, and you know those cute little wristbands you got at the end of the first phase? Hold on to them, because if any one team member loses theirs, the whole team gets physically ejected from the maze via reverse summoning seal. Unless you want to give up or something, say, one of your team members is about to die, then you should probably take it off, because if you get to the tower with a dead teammate, you don't get to pass anyway. By the way, hint hint, if there's any team that you want to get kicked out before the 3rd round, that's a good way to get them kicked out, hint hint. There was some nervous shuffling as the various genin glanced around at each other, trying to size up their competition. I, for one, was simply glad that Naruto was no longer traffic cone orange, otherwise we'd be under an unnecessary bout of scrutiny. More than was due. Moto-san clapped his hands. And that's it. My final words? Have fun, stay safe, and don't mess up. I sure enjoyed myself designing this thing, and I'll be really disappointed if you guys don't enjoy yourselves solving it, he said, his sharp teeth spread in a dissonantly cheerful shark smile. Everyone good? Then ready, set, go. The crowd of genin exploded out into the rock walls, and immediately afterwards, there were screams coming from all directions. Those who had been lucky enough to get a spot by the front were now human shields for everyone coming after them instead, against the maze, against the traps, against the other teams coming up behind and around them. It was chaos. The one entrance into the canyon was completely bottlenecking all the test takers. People were getting trampled left and right. I could see Choji's giant frame edging everyone else out of the way. In 2 steps he was gone, Hinata and Sasuke along with him, riding on his back. I was randomly reminded of those children's cartoon characters with the devil and angel on each shoulder. Meanwhile, Lee, Niji, and Tenten were literally picking people up and throwing, kicking, punching, or stabbing them out of their way as they went along. Then, more screaming, this time about bugs. Several people were wandering off in the wrong direction as if drunk and lost. Genjutsu. And Kikaichu. There went Team 8. The Genjutsu was probably Sakura. She'd have the chakra control and aptitude for it. If only we knew something advanced enough to steer someone else in the wrong direction. Whoever wasn't fortunate enough to get out of their way in time was immediately swarmed by Shino's bugs. They weren't the only ones. As soon as the people in the middle and back realized they weren't going anywhere without forcing someone else out of the way first, they began to fight their way through. Blood was running freely, and most of the competitors hadn't even entered the actual exam yet. "What are we going to do?" Naruto moaned, ducking a kunai. "It's okay. I have a plan," I said. "When do you not?" Ino smiled. "All right, what is it?" About 3 substitutions later, we were at the front of the group, cackling like mad and running for our lives while the people we had used as our placeholders were left standing back in the corner, wondering what the hell had just happened. By the time they had figured it out, the 3 of us were already gone, too far out of range for anyone to attempt the same thing on us. My lungs were on fire, but I wouldn't have it any other way. To watch a well-crafted plan execute perfectly was amazing, yes. But to see the same exact thing occur with a plan so stupidly simple, there was no way I could describe it. The adrenaline rush coming from tricking a large group of people with pure, unadulterated idiocy was a feeling that could not be replicated by anything else. A smug "it's working, just as I expected" simply could not compare to a half-giddy, half-triumphant "God, this is so dumb. I can't believe it's working." Suddenly I understood Kakashi-sensei's sense of humor just a little bit more. And gods, it was great. But even though we were doing well now, we couldn't afford to grow complacent. The memory of all the people bleeding in the traps near the entrance sobered me up quite quickly, and we were soon forced to come up with a plan for our own survival. Unlike Team 8, none of us had tracker animals to scout out the terrain for us beforehand, and unlike Teams 9 and 10, we didn't have special eyes to see ahead, either. We did have ninjutsu, and Naruto's clones though. So there was that. It took us a moment to coordinate ourselves, but soon we had our trap-detecting abilities down to a science. I could use earth jutsu to shift underground rocks with each step, and use that to detect if there were any pit traps before us. Ino would be on the lookout for genjutsu and above-ground wires, and Naruto's clones would be in the front, as a final mode of defense. If any one of them dispersed, we'd know where not to step. For the first part of the maze, we managed to avoid all the other teams, which was mostly a good thing. I say mostly because the maze itself was more dangerous than the genin running around in it, as we soon discovered. Luckily not the hard way. Kakashi-sensei had done that to us one too many times for us to make the same mistakes here now. The examiners had truly gone all out on this thing. Any patch of earth could be the entrance to a pit of spikes. A convenient-looking opening in the rocks was definitely laced with trip wires to snares and kunai launchers. Most of the traps were well hidden, and the ones that weren't only served to trick the impatient into letting their guards down. We had been here before, so we mostly knew our way around, but even so, we had to progress slowly and carefully, with a bunch of Naruto clones ahead of us at all times. He had the energy to fill up the whole maze with clones, actually, but I didn't want any Naruto clones to accidentally run into an enemy team, and when he had tried to simply summon a clone so that it appeared at the top of the maze, one of the Chunin proctors had immediately kicked it off. But if the sole challenge of the maze was avoiding traps, it wouldn't be much of a Chunin exam. We met our first opposition a few hours in. Or rather, they met us. It wasn't much of a fight, because while they had been distracted by a Naruto clone, we had come up in their blind spot. From there, yanking off a wristband didn't take more than a few seconds in a shadow clutch. We disposed of 2 or 3 more teams in the same manner, each met in a shorter interval of time than the first. Our first real fight had been a Kumo team with a very unfortunate naming scheme. I knew that it was tradition for Kumo Nin to name people after letters of the alphabet. What I didn't realize was that Kumo Nin also had a very ironic sense of humor. At least, the Kumo Chunin in charge of team formation, anyway. They insisted upon calling themselves Team for the Win, but come on. With the letters W, T, and F on the same team, did they really expect people to go with that? Well, that didn't matter. Team FTWWTF was slightly older than us. Only by a few years. Which didn't seem like much, unless those years were separating pre- and post-growth spurt. In any event, F had been a stealth expert, one of the few genjutsu users in existence to have mastered full invisibility, and she was the one who gave us the most trouble out of the 3 of them. But the wristbands were linked between team members, so when Ino had managed to take out W, all of them disappeared. As we kept going deeper into the maze, the frequency of people attacking us got higher and higher. Which was weird because even if the pathways were deliberately driving us towards other people, our meetings shouldn't have been this frequent. Unless my calculations were off. Which I was sure they weren't, and that bothered me, because for some reason I felt bored and itching for a fight, even when there was no fight to be had, even when logically I knew the most optimal strategy was to avoid all the fights we could, and only take advantage of a sneak attack if the opportunity presented itself. That was when I noticed that something was wrong. For one, the rock walls were starting to seem slightly off. Just slightly. But enough to get me on high alert. I remembered the exact layout of this place, and I knew, completely shifting the foundations Mother Nature had set all for a bunch of measly genin were not in the examiner's best interest. Adding walls and setting more traps, that was understandable. But changing the face of the rock canyon itself was too time-consuming and inefficient. Naruto, are you okay? Ino asked. You look a bit green. I don't know, Naruto muttered, pushing Ino away. Ino slapped his arm. Naruto slapped her back. Ino curled her fingers into a fist. This wasn't right. Naruto was loud and boisterous. But he was never deliberately rude or hurtful. I surreptitiously drew a weapon and hid it behind my back. What was the code they gave us during the first phase? Do I look like I remember? Naruto snapped. You guys were the ones who solved it. Ino had to knock me out to get the answers to me. I felt angry for no reason, like I couldn't trust Naruto. I didn't feel like trusting Ino either. I hated both of them. Which was very strange, because there was no reason why I should be. Drugs, I whispered. What? Naruto asked. Guys, we have to stay calm. We're running on borrowed time here. Naruto narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? I think they've released mind-altering gases into this maze, I explained. Colorless and odorless, but it's a delayed effect sort of thing. Induces paranoia and aggression. I remember reading about something like this once, rarely used in combat, because it's hard to control, notoriously unpredictable, and could easily affect your teammates in the same vicinity as your enemies. But when you're applying it from the top of a canyon, where you have fresh air, on a bunch of genin who you want to mess with but not kill. Brilliantly evil, Ino said, calming down. Most teams won't be smart enough to realize they're being messed with, especially if they regularly argue with their teammates anyway. They'll just continue to get more irrational and disoriented, until they finally turn on each other. Or if they're close to another team, they'll have the urge to fight anyway, even if combat isn't in their best interest. Either way, there'll be their own reason why they won't get out of here in time. Naruto scratched his head. Is there an antidote? I shrugged. There probably is, but we don't have it. It's so rarely used anyway. I think Sand tried it, like once 2 wars ago, and it was a bust, so they never tried it again, that I doubt it's distributed commercially. Which is why they're using it here. Few people would be able to get an unfair advantage when faced with something like this, even if they have poison experts on their team. It's not enough that they test our ability to remain calm even when the situation is bad. They have to test our ability to remain calm when our brains are being physically and chemically told otherwise. So what do we do now? Well, now that we're aware of the fact, we can control ourselves more consciously. And cover our noses and mouths. I don't know if that will help, but if we convince ourselves that it's working, we might be able to psychologically trick ourselves into thinking that we're no longer being affected by this gas. Meanwhile, Naruto, see if you can get us a column of fresh air. I don't know how long the effects last, but the sooner we get rid of the source the better. We look like Kakashi-sensei, Ino said. I laughed. Maybe that's why. I was cut off with a scream. That sounded like Hinata and Choji, Ino said. And Sasuke. This was bad. Kakashi-sensei may have told us not to trust anyone else in the exams, but Choji was my friend. If he was in trouble, I couldn't just leave him. Ino, naturally, would drag the rest of us along regardless when it came to Sasuke. And you'd have to be a douchebag of major proportions to leave a girl like Hinata to die. But then again, maybe they were just being affected by the gas, and it was no big deal. Maybe it was just some other trick of the examiners, to test and see if we were stupid enough to go running into an obvious trap disguised as comrades in trouble. There was a loud hiss and a pop, and Naruto started. One of my clones just dispersed. Team 10 is right up ahead. Some giant snake is attacking them, and I guess not. Giant snake? Like how giant? Ino asked worriedly. As in summon size big, Naruto said. Like 10 boa constrictors. Big enough to swallow one of us whole. The tip of the tail was the size of my leg, and it smacked my clone in the side. Summon size? I asked. There's no way any normal genin could do that. The only person currently capable of summoning one of the giant snakes is, holy shit, Orochimaru, Ino finished. What the heck is a Sannin doing in the Chunin exams? I don't know. I whispered, my mind racing. I know there were suspicions that Sand was planning something, but Orochimaru. Shikamaru? Naruto asked. Orochimaru was a missing nin of Konoha. He could be back here for any reason. The question was, if he and Sand were actively working together, or if he had known of the Sand attack and was using it as a distraction for his own agenda, or if both he and Sand knew about each other and were working together. So many possibilities. And yet Team Asuma had been the first to run into them. The team was Sasuke Uchiha. This was no coincidence. Ino, send up 3 red flares. Get some adults over here. 3? Ino asked, shocked. I could understand why. 1 flare by itself was the ultimate code for an emergency. I nodded. Yes. 3. The bright red beams arced into the air, highly visible against the slowly darkening sky. This is really bad, isn't it? Naruto asked. Which is why we use those flares, I said. Ino shook her head. But we can't just stand and wait here either. What if it takes too long for the proctors to arrive? We have to help them. We can't just run in there blindly. We need a plan. I told her. Listen, Choji is my friend too, but if we all die that's not going to make things any better, is it? Why isn't anyone coming? Naruto asked. Suddenly, my legs felt like they had been frozen to the ground. There was a giant elephant sitting on my chest. I couldn't breathe. My hands started to shake, and my vision was blacking out around the edges. Before my eyes, my mind began showing me future visions of my own death over and over and over again. Killer intent, I gasped. That's why. Then I went under. Chapter 13, Serpent Strike. The Chunin Exams, Phase 2. Base 9, Observation. Ibiki Marino narrowed his eyes at the TV screen as he watched the team of Kabuto Yakushi, the same guys that were supposed to have failed the Chunin exams 6 times before, figure out the trick almost immediately. Kabuto, you idiot, you know he won't be pleased if you. Shut up now, you're just saying that because you know I'm right. Oro, we're being drugged, you idiot. Shut up. And then, Ibiki watched in wonder as Kabuto began mixing chemicals faster than a blink of an eye, with skill that was normally reserved only for the greatest medics on par with Tsunade. In the matter of a few seconds he had shoved cloths soaked with the antidote to the drug to the faces of his teammates, effectively cutting them off from revealing any more information in their artificial anger. What the hell? Ibiki thought. They had deliberately chosen that drug because it was unlikely that anyone would even recognize its existence, let alone know enough of its properties to figure out an antidote for it. And that quickly, too. Either this guy was just that smart, or the drug originated from Sunagakure. What if he knows how to deal with it because something was terribly wrong? Especially since this Kabuto Yakushi individual definitely had the skills to pass. Maybe it was bad luck, but bad luck alone couldn't account for all that, otherwise Tsunade of the Sannin would have never graduated the academy. So if it wasn't a lack of skill, and if it wasn't a lack of luck, then what was it? Kabuto Yakushi, the eternal genin, secretly a Jonin-level spy. Ibiki laughed ruefully to himself. Ha! He would have spat in the face of anyone who brought him such a ridiculous conspiracy theory. Would have, had it been anyone but Hatake. Of course only he could be right about a theory as crazy as this, Ibiki thought. This particular chemical hadn't just been chosen for laughs, although it was fun, watching the genin go crazy. When teammates started turning on each other, they were very likely to reveal very sensitive information about themselves. As Kabuto's team had almost done, before they were cut off, he scratched at his ANBU mask through his hinge. This specific double layer of disguise had been temporarily agreed on as standard protocol for this particular defensive strike. All of the ANBU were masked in this way, first, in the regular high-quality bone-white armor that only the village's most elite forces could afford to use, and then, the identity of another Chunin examiner on top of that. They couldn't afford to let knowledge of their suspicions of the Sand invasion out, and obviously highly visible squads of upper-level assassins patrolling what should have been a standard Chunin exam, albeit a rather crowded one, would blow that cover. Before he had been the head of ANBU torture and interrogation, when he had just been a new, green recruit, and the previous head, Mikado Yohi, had still been in charge, he'd spend hours and hours going over their one philosophy of war. Half of victory is what you know, and the other half is what the enemy doesn't. In any event, operations of this magnitude weren't cleared for knowledge by the general forces anyway. Not that he didn't trust his fellow shinobi, but many jonin could be notoriously loose-lipped after a couple of drinks. The Sand, and their little ally, were not allowed to even catch wind of the vaguest rumor that Konoha was even the slightest bit prepared for their scheme. Sir Anbual, to his left, pointed down at the sparring genin. Is that supposed to be some sort of Kekiai Genkai? Because I've never seen it before. Ibiki turned away from Kabuto Yakushi for just a few seconds to stare at his also purple-clad, tacky, teammate. Said teammate was using his limbs to coil and twist around his opponent like some sort of demented rubber puppet. And no, Ibiki had never seen anything like it before, and he had seen plenty of highly disturbing things during his long tenure as head of ANBU torture and interrogation. Even if he hadn't, the fact that this guy's body was doing things way beyond the natural realm of chakra was enough of a warning bell. Genin did not just invent entirely new ways of fighting all on their own, least of all Genin who failed Chunin exams 6 whole times in a row. No, he answered his subordinate, those aren't Kekkei Genkai. They're body modifications. His radio crackled to life. Sir, Squad Salamander Alpha echoed over the line. Report of body modifications on the sound team confirmed. I repeat, report of body modifications on the sound team confirmed. Copy that, Ibiki barked in reply. One of them has pipes built into his arms. Not even air ninjutsu, just a couple of metal pipes literally sticking out of his palms. That's 2 of them we've got to watch, then, Ibiki muttered angrily to himself. What are their estimated skill reports? They seem to be regular genin in terms of both skill and intelligence, sir. All of them are in their mid-teens, maybe 14, 15 years old. And unless they're purposely using subterfuge tactics to throw us off, their maturity is at about the expected level. Maybe a bit on the lower end, the speaker from Squad Salamander Alpha replied. The only unusual things seen so far are the pipes built into one of the boys, and the sound-based jutsu of the other boy. Continue, we are not sure how they came to be there. The pipes are definitely a nasty work of surgery. As for the other boy, it could just be a special jutsu. No confirmation on him yet. And their third member? Standard sound-based genjutsu. She's the most normal one out of the 3. Any interesting conversations? They have a master, it appears. They were arguing about him earlier, when the drug was released into the maze. No explicit reference to who that master is yet. Strange way to refer to a Jonin sensei, if that's what they're talking about. Copy. Over and out, Ibiki said shortly, tucking the radio set back into his belt. Now those are some very interesting news. Some very interesting news indeed. Black Hawk, orders, sir, continue to keep careful watch over Team Kabuto. We'll have a wonderful little welcome party hosted by ANBU torture and interrogation waiting for them at their exit. What about that other team, sir? Ibiki smiled grimly. These were teenagers they were dealing with, probably just unwitting pawns, just like the original Chunin examiners currently knocked out and in bed that his ANBU squad had replaced. But orders were orders, and right now, their mission was to keep the village safe, and if that meant leaving no stone unturned, whether it was a team of potential spies or a couple of stupid kids playing ninja who happened to get caught up with the wrong crowd, then so be it. And thus, Ibiki gave his final command. Oh, they're invited too. We want to play nice and be polite hosts so no one gets their feelings hurt, don't we? Contrary to popular belief, he did have a heart. It was just all ugly and shriveled up. Wait, ANBU Gopher raised her hand. She was the youngest one on the team, a newly minted Jonin from one of the Hyuga branch families. We're supposed to play dumb and keep quiet, right? How do we do that if we capture them? Won't they know that the ANBU are watching them then, if a few of their spies suddenly go missing? But we're not ANBU, Ibiki told her innocently. We're just your average Chunin examiners, and we're just rewarding them for a job well done by giving them the best rooms in the suite, while they wait for everyone else to finish. Sir, we have another problem. Ibiki turned away from Gopher and leveled a glare at the ceiling squad member that had interrupted him. What? The tracking seals on the wristbands for all the genin, they're no longer working. Someone just disabled them. Then the radio crackled to life once more. Black alert. I repeat, black alert. Ibiki dropped everything and swore at the top of his lungs. Shit, Kakashi thought as soon as he saw the snake summon. We expected Sunagakure to cause trouble. Not, whatever the hell this is. Please tell me it's not going to be, oh, who am I kidding? Of course I know who the hell this is. Freaking Orochimaru, that's who, because Anko is the only other person I know with snake summons and she hasn't figured out how to get the giant snakes on her side yet and why, oh why, is this happening? If the giant serpent hadn't popped out of the ground right then and there, Kakashi was pretty sure that the Sannin might have gone through this entire thing unnoticed. Not long after, the ANBU that had been assigned to survey this area of the maze fell to the ground, his head detached from his shoulders. And then his 2 partners, damn, gone too. They had put up a good fight, but Orochimaru was more than just ANBU. He had been one of Konoha's best and brightest. Compared to these guys, well, he didn't know them personally, but they seemed young, barely newbies. Skilled ANBU wouldn't be all the way out here in this maze, observing genin. They'd be in the city center of Konoha, defending the main sectors or out on money-making missions. Kakashi was the only veteran here apart from Ibiki, but Ibiki was an interrogator, not a frontline fighter. Damn, I hate this armor. It brings up bad memories. But at least wearing this set, which had been borrowed without permission from someone else, was better than wearing his own. With this one, he could make the excuse that he wasn't actually back in ANBU. It was just another disguise, albeit a highly uncomfortable one, temporarily donned for the sole purpose of following his genin through these exams. His own ANBU uniform was safely tucked away in a cardboard box in his attic, and that one he had sworn to never touch again. Never ever, not in 1,000,000,000,000,000 years. But hey, what were his promises even worth? He was Kakashi Hatake, a shinobi, a conman, a trickster, a well-known liar. The mouths of men were just two flaps of skin, so it would be stupid to believe anything sounds that came out of them, his mouth least of all. You'd think sabotage by the hidden sand would be bad enough. But oh no, someone had to go and invite Orochimaru to join the party, too. Orochimaru, Konoha's most dangerous missing nin forever, until Itachi Uchiha. But that was a completely different story, and just, oh gods. And speaking of the gods, those bastards just loved to make his life miserable, didn't they? It was almost like the heavens were getting revenge on him for something. He had no idea what he, a completely innocent ninja, had done to justify this sort of retribution. It wasn't as if he lived to make other people miserable on a daily basis now, did he? Oh wait, and to top it all off, his team was also in the vicinity. Because dumb luck or whatever, but the point was, they hadn't left even though common sense dictated otherwise. Of course they'd run over to help their friends. You should have known better, Hatake, Kakashi thought to himself. You've been spouting off Obito's ideologies since the day you met. If they die here, no. I can't let them die here. But what if they— No, Hatake, you get a grip right now and get the kids out of this mess before they get here and make things even worse. Black alert. I repeat, black alert, he snapped over the radio as he started to seal off the area. He was no master, but that didn't mean he wasn't highly capable. Being a student of the late Yondaime had some of its perks, and one of them was learning sealing from only the best. You just didn't walk away from such tutelage without at least picking up something about sealing. All capable ANBU teams report to the area immediately. I have quarantined the area. Copy. Seal system disabled. We're summoning backup now. Do your best. Kakashi sucked in a breath. Crap. Should have expected it, from a guy like Orochimaru. They'd been too smart for their own good, bringing the children outside of the city walls like this. Sure, they'd be far away from harm if Sand decided to try anything funny against Konoha itself. But now that Orochimaru was in the equation, it meant whatever help wasn't already here would take a long time to arrive. The canyon was miles away from home base. It would take a few minutes for even the fastest shinobi, running at a sprint, to get here. Orochimaru only needed much less than that to end them all. Sasuke Uchiha was still curled up at the foot of the rock wall, paralyzed by the man's massive killer intent. Even Kakashi, all these years later, still had trouble standing up to it, let alone a little genin, no matter how skilled the academy teachers claimed he was. He grabbed the boy by the back of his shirt, the massive collar providing a convenient grip, and a good hard toss landed him nice and far away from the range of fire. Thankfully, another ANBU was already there, waiting to receive the boy. One less life for him to worry about. My, Orochimaru hissed behind him, his voice still as sickly sweet as ever. And what have we here? One less life, and one more death. Logic, I chastised myself. It's just killer intent. You're not actually dying. Pull yourself together, Shikamaru. Beside me, Ino and Naruto were also gasping. I tried to reach out to them, but the oppressive fear just kept dragging me down. Damn it! Naruto suddenly roared. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I'm gonna be Hokage one day. And I'm not letting this stupid whatever it is hold me down. And then the fear broke, and suddenly I was back in my right mind again. Thanks, Naruto, Ino gasped. She looked around. Where is everyone? I sent up the flares. I don't know, I said. There was an explosion, and another scream. We have to go help, Ino said. I don't know where the heck everyone is, but if we just sit here and wait for someone else to fix things, they might die before the others come. We have to take matters into our own hands. There's no other way. Fine, I said. Ino did have a point. The people in charge of this event most likely already knew that something was wrong, even without our flares. It would be hard to miss giant snakes popping up out of nowhere. I only hoped that the same people were smart enough to turn off the drug gas, too, because now that the field was actually a combat zone, it wouldn't do to have stuff that could potentially hurt your own side floating around in the air. But we need a plan to minimize damage, otherwise we'll just be making things worse. Of course, said Ino. Right. Naruto, go in there with some clones and distract the snake. Ino, aim some fire jutsu at its eyes to blind it, and I'll try my best to hold it down. If that doesn't work, then Naruto, I want you to jump on it with as many clones as you possibly can to try and squish it. All right, got it, they said, and we rushed around the corner. Now! I signaled, and a cloud of clones exploded out from Naruto. Naruto-kun, hey, Hinata! Don't worry about me. Where's Choji? The snake reared in pain as Ino managed to get a perfect shot in. Right after, I latched onto it with my shadow, and at the same time sucked it into a sinkhole. As soon as it was trapped, I began crushing it under the tons of mud, tar, and rock starting from the tail. The snake's hissing turned into screams, for it was stuck. I made sure of that when the exact patch of ground I had chosen to trap it in was one laced with collapsing nail pits. The snake ate him. Hinata stuttered, pointing at the massive bulge on the snake's throat. I noticed she had no wristband on. The strip of plastic was lying on the ground, a few feet away. So they had already tried the surrender mode. Evidently, the reverse summoning seals that had been used to transport all those other teams out of the maze were no longer working. That meant we were being kept here deliberately. Help! Choji's voice echoed. He was using the multi-sized jutsu to prevent the snake from swallowing him completely, but it wasn't very effective. Snakes could swallow prey much bigger than they were, and all Choji was doing was forcing it to stretch itself out a bit wider. I began to compact the earth even more, in an attempt to cut off its digestive tract. Choji! Hinata whispered. Suddenly, a look of determination came over her, and before I could even think, she had charged straight at the frozen summon and punched it as hard as she could in the throat, which was pretty hard. Hinata may not have looked like much, but she was still the heiress to the Hyuga clan. She had been learning taijutsu since she could walk. And while her confidence levels were abysmally low, I had seen her do some pretty awesome stuff when necessity called. Desperation made a good teacher in certain situations, and now was one of them. All I could say was, I was glad Hinata managed to call on her strengths when she did, because it saved Choji's life, and that was points in my book. The snake made an ugly choking noise, and a second later, it had vomited up Choji, who was now flying through the air toward the opposite wall. Everyone duck and cover! Choji yelled. There was another explosion, only this time, it came from inside the snake's throat. For a second, I thought that someone had managed to find a species of fire-breathing snake somehow, until I realized that the snake itself was actually burning up from the inside. You detonated a tag inside of its mouth, I realized. That's brilliant! And now that Choji was no longer in there, I could crush the summon as well as I pleased. Snakes might have been creatures of the earth, but even they couldn't survive a cave-in. Layering rock over it, so we would be protected from the worst of the explosion, I allowed the snake to die, buried under a cloud of smoke and gravel. The summon screeched one last time, and then dispersed back to its own dimension. Sasuke's still in trouble, though, Choji said quickly, wiping the slime off his clothes. We got separated from him. There was this guy, and he was way stronger than all of us. He stole Sasuke's tag, but we weren't kicked out of the maze for some reason. I don't know. He was just a really creepy guy. I don't know how he got here. He literally just popped out of the ground like a gopher. I closed my eyes and forced myself to calm down. Judge the current scenario. Set your goals and priorities. Use that to form your plan of action. One thing was clear, our job here was no longer passing a stupid test, not when we were all a mere corridor away from death, to survive. That was all we could do at this point, which begs the question, just what else is going on that we genin don't know about, but might be affected by anyway. We still have to help Sasuke-kun, Ino reminded us. My clone just found 3 dead ANBU up there, Naruto told us. What? I gasped. What about the others? Still fighting, but they won't be for long, Naruto said. Sasuke's still alive, but he's not moving. Either he got knocked out, or the KI is still pinning him in place. Just then, one of the ANBU appeared at the top of the wall. You kids, get out of here! Our friend's still back there. Choji yelled. We've got him! You guys have to leave! Now! The ANBU ordered, quickly herding us out of the way. Sure enough, her partner appeared behind us, carrying an unconscious Sasuke on his back. The ceiling network is down. Everyone must evacuate immediately, as we weren't suicidal enough to sit around arguing pointlessly. We obeyed and started running in the opposite direction. Not a moment too soon, either, for the moment she finished given the order another flare of angry chakra exploded out from behind the walls. The corridors collapsed, demolished by Orochimaru's sheer power, and then there was nothing standing between us and death except for a stretch of air and a thin wall of mortal men. Itty bitty Anbu-san, Orochimaru crooned. You thought you could hide from me? Well, hold him off. Kakashi barked a final command into the radio as Orochimaru advanced on him. Figures. He couldn't remain hidden from that man for long. The guise was up, Orochimaru gasped mockingly. What's this? You'll hold me off? Little bitty Anbu-kun, you all look so adorable in your matching outfits. Kakashi showed no emotion except for an increase in the bravado. Not that laying it on thick would fool the Sannin anyway, and defiantly stomped one last time in the ground, closing the box seal. Realizing he was trapped, Orochimaru hissed in anger and tried to break past the line of calligraphy with a flare of energy so that he could access his human prize, only to be impeded by an invisible wall of chakra instead. Oh, I see, the man chuckled. Except, that wasn't quite completely accurate, because if the rumors about what he had done to himself were true, and they probably were, because he only dealt with Konoha Anbu intelligence, the most valuable and accurate gossip mongeress around, then he was not quite a man any longer, a seal to prevent movement of both physical bodies and chakra. But I suppose that's to be expected from you, Kakashi Hatake, although, didn't you have a different mask? Anyway, I thought you quit. Orochimaru knew who he was. Great. He could sense the confusion rising from the other Anbu. As they should, because he technically shouldn't even be here. What was the point of using the wrong mask if you weren't going to get any anonymity from it either way? I'm impressed, Kakashi-kun. Truly, I am. Fuinjutsu is a very difficult art to master, you know. Especially learning by yourself, without a living teacher to train you. It's not as if being forever alone should bother you, because you're already used to dead teammates, aren't you? Kakashi refused to rise to the bait. Only the Sandaime and sometimes Jiraiya were allowed to talk down to him like that. The Sandaime, because orders were orders, unless they didn't really suit him, naturally, and Jiraiya, because he was willing to put up with some verbal abuse if it meant that he could continue to get free advance copies of the Ika Ika series. Unfortunately, you forgot one little thing, my little Kakashi-kun. Whenever I'm trapped in here with you, it also means that you're also stuck in here with me. Doesn't it? The voices of the genin, his team, his family were getting closer. Wait, no, take that back. He didn't have a family, he didn't have loved ones, because they were all just going to get killed like all the others. And oh, who was he kidding? He was so completely screwed. Those damn kids had screwed him over. Had screwed themselves over by worming their way into his heart, and now they'd pay the price for it. No, that's not right either. Focus, Hatake, and stop panicking. There's nothing you can do but face the problem right in front of you and solve it. Now. Or else, please. Please. And while Kakashi would have liked nothing better than to turn tail and get the hell out of there, that would have meant leaving his students, plus Asuma's team, too, to the mercies of this monster with the face of a man, only that was an insult to monsters, was it not? So, instead, he stood his ground and shifted his own position so that he became another barrier between Orochimaru and Team 7. And please don't let this one turn out like the other Team 7. Please. Well? Orochimaru hissed, slithering closer. You're in my way now, you know. Oh, but you already know that, don't you? You're Kakashi Hatake, the little 5-year-old prodigy. Of course you're always aware of what you're doing, even when you act otherwise. Think wisely, little one. Is this really your choice? Shut up. You're even more annoying than I am, Kakashi thought, digging his feet into the ground. On the outside, he remained silent and impassive, behind his brick wall of emotionless masks. Well then, a fight it is. Death is what you want, and so it is death that you shall have. Shall I give you a moment to figure out what to say when you finally get your family reunion with your beloved father? Kakashi responded in the usual way for irritatingly talkative enemies, and gathered lightning in his palm. Chapter 14, Dead or Alive. The second phase. Orochimaru let out a loud bark of sarcastic laughter. God, the Raikiri was boring as hell. You'd think, given Hatake's normal mentality, that he'd be a little more creative. Oh? What's this? Orochimaru asked, dodging his strike. Little bitty Anbu-chan is finally unsheathing his claws? How impressive. You think that your ultimate technique will help you? A stab to the heart won't kill a man without a heart, and it wasn't a lie. A stab to the heart could not kill a man without a heart, And you couldn't kill something that was already dead to begin with, anyway. Love and friendship. Please. Those were just lies they cooked up by the village to rope every new generation into the shinobi life. Two of the Anbu swung their swords at him. Orochimaru rolled his eyes and blocked their strikes with his bare hands, letting his chakra do the work. For a moment he felt a wonderful satisfaction at watching the metal melt beneath his fingertips, but then a sharp pain ran up to his elbows, and that was all the warning he had to let go before a shower of sparks exploded from the steel, lighting up the dark canyon in silver-white flares. Electrocution. It was not fun. Orochimaru glared at the receding chakra wires. Of course they would lead to Hitaki, those stupidly brave children, daring to take up the front for him. He wondered how Kakashi would react to being responsible for their deaths. As they raised their swords again, Orochimaru leaped into the air and landed on their wrists, 1 foot on each. Using his knees, he forced them to cross their own blades with each other, and then, with a twist, he sent both Anbu flying in opposite directions, onto the weapons of their own allies. There were horrified shouts and desperate apologies, none of which would do them any good. Words could not heal such wounds. He heard them and laughed, but not for long, because his arms were going to be useless for the remainder of the fight as a result of that attack. Even with his fast reaction, the damage had already been done. His muscle spasms were too strong to control or ignore. They would be more of a hindrance than an asset in this battle. To stop and heal them himself would be more trouble than it was worth. Electrical burns were a tricky thing to deal with, not so easy as just stitching cut skin back together. Luckily, then, that he did not rely on hand seals for many of his jutsu. He still had plenty of chakra left. He could defeat them without arms. All the same, it was an irritating handicap, especially when surrounded. When he returned to sound, he would have to have Kabuto take a look at them. He did not doubt his medic Nin's abilities, but just in case, he should probably order some of his subjects to be prepared to give their arms up anyway. Kakashi appeared in front of him, singing his hair with lightning chakra. Orochimaru spat a stream of fire at the boy, but at the last second he managed to twist out of the way. He flipped through the air, and landed on the ground behind him. Damn, that kid was annoying. Orochimaru whipped around and caught him in the ribs just as he was about to stab him in the back, his other foot collapsing the knee of another Anbu who had tried to distract him from the front. As he bore down upon Kakashi, Orochimaru summoned a field of earth pikes below him, intending to rip him to pieces. However, Kakashi escaped death yet again. Right before he hit the ground, he broke through some of the sharp tips of the pikes with a sweep of his Raikiri, creating just enough space for him to roll out of the way. Using the momentum of that spin, Kakashi vaulted himself back out of the spike pit, right into Orochimaru's feet. Orochimaru raised his leg to kick him through the wall, but before he could do so, Kakashi had dragged a knife down the back of his knee, severing the tendon. He stumbled, and Kakashi took that moment to aim his electrified blade at his back again. He's not aiming for the heart, Orochimaru realized. He's going for the nerves this time around. How I hate him. Surrounding himself with wind chakra, he forced all of his opponents back several steps. Kakashi was forced to stop his attack to regain his footing, and that was all the time he needed to grab the boy by the neck and throw him backwards into the rock column behind him. He hit the stone with a hard thwack, and went still. His box seal from earlier, which had been dependent on how he maintained his chakra, sputtered and died. Good riddance. Vaguely Orochimaru wondered if this was all part of yet another complex political plot involving the Konoha Council and Danzo Shimura. Probably. There was always something going on in that nursing home for murderers. Then he decided that he didn't care. None of that affected him anymore. Let the Akatsuki and old Sarutobi duke it out in secret. All Orochimaru wanted was his own freedom. In this world, it's every man for himself, and don't let the Hokage's cute little bits of propaganda fool you. You're all here to die. You might as well make the most of your life before then. Last time he'd felt this way, his parents, Orochimaru really didn't want to go back to that dark little place again. That was the first time he had tasted death, but it certainly hadn't been the last. They called him a monster, but if only they would try it. To tear apart another living being and watch their innards writhe while they screamed, there was nothing as delicious as control. On the inside, they were just like him, and if they didn't like it, then too bad. Their precious little feelings were not his problem. They didn't matter, nothing in the world did. Orochimaru had come to terms with that long ago. Murder wouldn't have been so easy if he wasn't meant to kill. The only things he could still live for were the experiments. Jutsu, power, knowledge, ideas lasted longer than people. It wasn't so easy to kill an idea. But people, well, Some things even Tsunade couldn't fix. Sakumo's wounds had been one of them. Not the tanto to the gut. Tsunade could have healed that if he had been found in time, but Sakumo Hatake had been dead long before he had ever killed himself. Better to die alive than to live dead, but he'd rather not be dead at all. Immortality was so close he could taste it. He moved forward, intending to end Kakashi's life. But the child he'd cleaved in half had been a different Anbu who'd gotten in the way. Oopsie daisy. Then, another one of his comrades had snuck up behind him and managed to plant some exploding tags on his back, and he was forced to abandon Kakashi to deal with those rats. They were terrified of him, as they should be, after watching him take down their unofficial leader in the span of a few seconds. But they didn't give up. They simply came at him again. And again. 10 years of being gone from the village, and he'd forgotten how frustrating Konoha Nin were. All he had come here for was the Uchiha boy, who had been smuggled away in the chaos. If he tarried here any longer, he'd lose him. It seemed he'd have to break one of his personal rules, and stop making sure everyone he killed was actually dead. Knockouts would have to do for now. He hated them so much, because they didn't fucking give up. Stupid will of fire crap, using teamwork as an excuse to gang up on someone and overwhelm them with swarming tactics. He ignored his own traitorous brain, which for some reason kept thinking, I used to be one of them. The first thing I noticed when we rounded the corner was the brick wall of killer intent that hit us once again, this time from behind. I swore as I watched even Naruto go down this time. Back there had just been a bit of the excess residue, while here was the real deal. Despite this, however, none of us seemed keen on giving up, especially since we knew what was waiting for us on the other side if we did. Naruto was as belligerent as ever, his face twisted into a snarl even when his knees refused to stand up. He was one of the few people I knew who would let their bodies quit before their minds gave up. Ho, Kage! I rolled my eyes. Typical Naruto. There's an S-class missing Nin coming after you and you're still chasing your dreams. And then, what the heck am I doing, teasing Naruto? There's an S-class missing Nin chasing after you, Shikamaru, and you're teasing Naruto. Ino let out a squeak. Sasuke-kun. She was, surprisingly, the first person in our group to get moving again. Maybe I shouldn't underestimate the power of an obsessive preteen crush, and for God's sake don't think about the lady in Tanyu. I realized as my mind started to clear. Both determination and humor can break the grip of killer intent. Interesting. Past the dull haze, I could see an outline, menacing, tall, and snake-like, flickering against the walls. Then the rock crumbled once more, and finally, we were meeting Orochimaru face to face for the first time. He'd left a trail of bodies behind him. I hoped they were just unconscious. But it was also equally likely that they were dead. Like the Anbu that had been carrying Sasuke. It's hard to fight when you're carrying someone on your back. Orochimaru had stabbed him through the head. Then, when the other Anbu had run up to get between us and him, he'd merely slapped her out of the way, as if she had been an annoying mosquito. She was slammed into the pile of rubble. I saw her go limp. Maybe it was just a concussion, and not a snapped neck. I prayed it was just a concussion, and not a snapped neck. We wouldn't be able to outrun him. The only option left was to stand and fight. But even with all of our combined strength, he'd still be able to destroy us with a flick of his fingers. Here we were, children, fresh out of the academy and in way over our heads. I had no chance against this man. Even a whole legion of Anbu couldn't stand up to him. I remembered my father's technique. The one I hadn't mastered yet. There are terrible things in this world. Things that die but don't stay dead. This was a perfect time to use it, but I couldn't. It wasn't complete. No, I couldn't. Father had warned me against that. No messing around with that technique until I was allowed to, or I'd get stuck and become something even less human than what I was fighting now. And I had heard too many stories of what terrible things happen to people attempting things they weren't ready for. Those who walk the shadows may very well become one with them. No, I couldn't make that mistake. At best the technique would fail and I would be back where I started, but with precious time wasted. At worst I'd kill myself instead of Orochimaru. He turned on us. Move aside, children. All I want is the last Uchiha. No, I said, move aside. No. He gave me another chance to back away. You are trying my patience. I naturally have very little, and most of it has already been spent. I say this one more time, move aside. Now, I was about to hesitate, wondering what the right thing to do should be. If I backed away, he'd do whatever he wanted to do to Sasuke, and leave the rest of us alone, maybe, But if I didn't, he'd just kill me and then do whatever he wanted to do to Sasuke anyway, and damn it, what was the point of being noble if it would just bring a result even worse than pragmatism? This saving your friend's business was more of a morale booster than anything else. In most situations where a comrade was in trouble, it was possible to save them and complete the mission. Then, you'd have both a complete mission and a still alive shinobi. Or if not, then at least you'd still be alive to try again. People made up all these stories about love and kindness, and they were important. I'd die for Ino and Naruto and Choji and even Kakashi-sensei. Not that they need saving, any day, but to Central Command, the reasoning was slightly different. Lives and training were not cheap, so keeping every possible man was the better solution. Of course, in my moment of indecision, Naruto jumped in and decided for me. No way, Snake Freak, it would have been funny if I wasn't so terrified, because all it served to do was piss off Orochimaru even more. I looked around, trying to find anything else I could use, and caught a glimpse of my wristband, where the deactivated summoning seal lay. If only these things would work. Then we'd all get out of this mess. But I didn't have enough knowledge to fix them. Any chakra I sparked against it simply looped back around the circuits uselessly, like a battery connected to itself. When in doubt, go back to the basics. Don't mess around with the things you're not ready for. Instinctively, I reached out with my shadow. You're crazy, Shikamaru, I told myself. You're crazy. That's Orochimaru, an S-class missing nin, one of the Sannin, the Sandame's most dangerous student, and you're trying to get him with the shadow possession jutsu of all things? Yes, I am. It doesn't matter if I'm just a genin. It doesn't matter if I'm only 12. I know what the hell I'm doing, and that's not going to change just because I'm fighting one of the legendary Sannin. That doesn't matter. My self-preservation screamed. You're still crazy. It's only crazy if it fails. If it works, it's genius. No one here was strong enough to defeat Orochimaru. No one except himself. Orochimaru licked his lips. The Sharingan, here it was, within his grasp. He was so close. Suddenly, he couldn't move. Orochimaru glanced down, only to meet the exceedingly smug face of the Nara boy. Cagemane. But how? He had made sure that his shadow was nowhere within the range of the boy's technique, and the tunnels his snakes had dug were all the way back there. What else could he have used? That was when Orochimaru noticed a tiny little gopher-sized hole behind him that hadn't been there before. A Nara with Earth Jutsu. Now that just wasn't fair. Next they'd be telling him about a Yamanaka with lightning jutsu. Which was highly possible, given the sensei of this team. The boy was fast, he'd give that to him. He must have formed it while his eyes had been on Sasuke Uchiha. No matter. The fact that he had Orochimaru trapped was a less than optimal situation, but not impossible to remedy. He began to flare his chakra in the opposite direction to the Cagemane's grip. Now, the stalemate would only last as long as their relative endurance levels. It was a war of attrition. And genius or not, the Nara boy was still a child with limited chakra reserves. Already he was trembling from the effort he was exerting. Soon enough, he would run out of energy and have to let go, and that was when Orochimaru would strike. Naras. Yet another little bunch of geniuses of Konoha. Yet another herd of lambs going to the slaughter. In desperation, his friends began attacking him, while the effects of the paralysis lasted. But it did them just about as much good as it did the ANBU back there. Once the Nara boy collapsed of exhaustion and had to let go, he just killed them all. All he was doing right now was buying them time. What a headache. He'd kill them. They all deserved to die, except for the Uchiha boy. His arms might be out of order because of the Nara's meddling, but he still had his fangs. If only he could just bite them all and get it over with. But the curse seal he had developed was limited to only one application at a time. It just so happened that the one he had stored up in his fangs right now had been prepared specifically with Sasuke Uchiha in mind, and chances were using it on any other subject would negate its effectiveness. It seemed he'd have to settle for the lower jaw, and currently, Orochimaru was already feeling extremely unforgiving to the young genius who thought himself good enough to bind a Sannin. Actually, he was extremely unforgiving to anyone who reminded him of himself, like most other people. Stupid little geniuses who all would fall down at one point or another. You don't know what you're doing, do you, you little idiot? I'm not joking. Get out of here. Run. Go. Now. Get away. I might be trying to kill you, but that doesn't mean I'm not telling the truth. Run. Go. Get out of here. Get away, or something else will kill you, slowly and painfully, and I promise you then that what I am doing now will seem merciful in comparison, because that something else is called Konoha, so please. Take this advice from a man with more experience than you. Too much more experience than you. Run. Now. While you still can. It's not too late to save yourself. Why won't you die already? All he had come here for was the last Uchiha. Why couldn't they understand that? Oh well. He had tried to warn them, and they hadn't listened. As expected. No one ever listened, not to him. But that worked out better for him, because it just meant that he couldn't be held accountable for what he was about to do next. Fine then, Orochimaru shrugged. I gave you more than enough chances, children, and you blew them all. If you will not allow me to go around you, then I will cut through you. The shadow disconnected, and he opened his jaws and lunged. There were fangs rushing at my face. Now or never. I ripped off my wristband, and felt a sharp pain in my back. Verdict, you're crazy. Then I saw Orochimaru scream and fall to his knees. But also a genius. Fuck. That was all Kakashi's normally eloquent mind could come up with. The fact that Orochimaru had just broken through the walls of the canyon maze instead of walking around them like a normal, polite person would meant that everything that was happening right now was in Kakashi's range of sight. He could see everything that was going on. 1. Orochimaru was headed for Sasuke Uchiha, and 2. Shikamaru was standing in his way, meaning Orochimaru was headed straight for Shikamaru. 2. Shikamaru was his student, meaning Shikamaru was on his team, meaning it was his job to protect him. But he was here, and Shikamaru was all the way over there, meaning he wouldn't be able to reach him in time. Another teammate was about to be killed before his face today, even though he had promised himself he'd never let it happen again. Not after Obito. Or Rin. Or Minato-sensei. There was a ringing sensation in his skull. Ringing. Bells. Bell test. A flash of purple from the tree line, and something had collided with his hip. And of course, Kakashi, you idiot, you can still save them. Kawarimi no Jutsu. What just happened? One moment, I was staring straight at Orochimaru's gaping mouth, my life flashing before my eyes, and the next, I had impacted the wall, and was now lying in the dirt surrounded by the unconscious bodies and cooling corpses. The sharp pain in my back had just been a sharp rock. In my place stood, one last Anbu. I was confused. How? And then I saw it, one last Anbu. Or more accurately, one of the first. One of them, dazed but not dead. He'd substituted himself. With me. There was a gleam of polished metal as he drew his sword. My mind started shutting down. I tried to fight against it, but it was no use. I blacked out. The sharp pain Kakashi felt in his shoulder barely registered as he saw his katana meet its mark. There was something morbidly satisfying about watching the blade sink straight into the roof of Orochimaru's mouth and exit out the back of his head. It didn't kill him, but that didn't matter. The important thing was that Shikamaru was now on the other side of the corridor, safe from harm, and the force of his stab had slowed down Orochimaru's momentum enough to prevent the guy taking a chunk out of the Uchiha kid as well. Orochimaru was so furious, the walls of the canyon were shaking. He was screaming something about that seal was a one-time use, brat. Not that Kakashi could bring himself to give two flying shits about the snake Sanin's non-existent feelings. There was something inky and bloody running down his back, but he ignored it. What? He thought sarcastically. Did I screw up your brilliant evil plan for the last Uchiha? Well, get in line. I ruin plans all the time, and just because you're one of the legendary Sannin doesn't mean you're any safer from me. Fool, Orochimaru gasped. You think a sword will stop me? You're no longer moving forward, so I'd say yes. Two equal but opposite forces moving against the same object will cancel each other out. Which you would know, if you had bothered to study elementary physics instead of dicking around with those quack experiments of yours. Kakashi smirked behind his mask despite himself. It just did. Still as much of a smart aleck as ever, I see. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes. I should cut out that tongue of yours. He took a step forward, and immediately collapsed, his charred, shriveled legs snapping underneath him. Kakashi jumped back in shock, and as he did so, his Sharingan caught a glimpse of the sealing wristbands on the competitors. They weren't just disabled, as they had been before. They had been completely burned out, as was Orochimaru's entire chakra system. Too much chakra, flowing in the wrong direction. The force has nowhere to go. So it explodes outwards, like a clogged pressure pipe. But how? He looked at Orochimaru. And then at the sealing wristbands. And then back to Orochimaru. And then at the blackened strip of ground where Shikamaru's shadow had been before. The cage main is a chakra construct. It can conduct energy, just like a seal can store it. Shikamaru, you're a genius. He had used Orochimaru's blocks on the maze's summoning seal system to redirect his own chakra against him. With little more than his clan's most basic technique and his own opponent's power, He had reduced one of the most dangerous men in the world to a complete mess. A completely defenseless mess. Now when in the world would he ever get a chance like this again? This man had tried to kill a person from his team. Whatever fear Kakashi had felt before was gone. Today was the day he would watch Orochimaru suffer, and today was the day he'd enjoy it. Kakashi let the charges build up in his hands. He normally didn't use this technique, because it was bad, not bad as in a bad technique, but bad as in not much better than the people I fight. But in cases like this, where a job needed to be done, and done thoroughly, Orochimaru needed a proper mind in order to continue possessing people, and he couldn't have a mind if he didn't have a brain, right? Look away, children, he ordered. They stood there, frozen. Go, he repeated. Take care of your friend. But you're injured, Nbu-san, Hinata Hyuga said. Doesn't matter. Leave. Injured? Where? Ah, hell, it doesn't matter. They nodded silently, and went behind the walls, with Asuma's 2 remaining students carrying Sasuke Uchiha, while Ino and Naruto's clones took care of Shikamaru. He let them clear observation range before turning back to Orochimaru. You can't kill me with, Orochimaru rasped angrily. Bitch, please, Kakashi interrupted him. I invented Chidori when I was just 13. If you thought a massive chakra drain as ridiculously loud and visible as that was my only original technique since then, you've got another thing coming, old man. What? You should have left the boy alone, Kakashi whispered, because I'm a monster, too, and he clapped his hands over the Sanin's ears. His victim screamed, and arched off the ground as the force of 1,000 electric needles rocketed through his head, painting the corridors with the liquefied contents of his skull. That's really disgusting, the silly part of Kakashi's mind giggled. Yeah, it is, he agreed. Now, what about that injury? His head was fuzzing up. His shoulder was burning. Out of the corner of his slowly blackening vision, he saw a dark, circular pattern of 3 comma-like spots forming on the skin of his shoulder, a pattering of feet. He felt someone lift him onto a stretcher. Reinforcements. Thank goodness. Apologies, senpai, someone whispered. I tried to get here as fast as I could, but someone stole my armor and uniform. Tenzu, you're a good man, Kakashi thought. Then there was nothing else but the burning on his shoulder. Chapter 15 Fallout. The Chunin exams, Phase 2 End Base. When I could finally open my eyes, I was lying on a bed, indoors. Ino was sitting beside me, brushing her hair. With her fingers, since she didn't have a comb, as we didn't have the time or space for such luxuries out in the field. And she wasn't so much brushing her hair, as she was pulling at it in chunks, but I like to say she was brushing her hair, because it just sounds nicer. I take it we made it out alive? I asked. My muscles felt dry and limp, like an underinflated water balloon, and my whole body felt numb. What the heck happened? And where's Naruto? It's a little past the first day. We just got here, actually. Naruto just walked out to go talk to Choji's team, she explained. We grouped up with them, because of the whole snake thing. We figured we might as well, since the more the merrier, right? Anyway, we both had injured people. Naruto had a bunch of his clones carry you, and Choji carried Sasuke. You were out for quite a while because of chakra exhaustion. What? I asked eloquently. You used the shadow bind to hold down Orochimaru, an S-class missing nin, you idiot. It's a miracle you're alive now. You should have died. Ino snapped angrily, before wincing at her tone and choice of words. Sorry. I was just worried. We would have died anyway, I tried to explain. I'd rather risk my life doing something than 100% die doing nothing. That hardly matters, she interrupted. You still have chakra exhaustion. The medic nin on base said you need a week's worth of rest. I nodded, digesting the information. It did not come lightly to me. That I would be bedridden for a whole week. It seemed like such a waste of time. I could be doing so much in a week. Training. Practicing new techniques. Or, most importantly, researching everything that was going on around me right now. My friends and I had just been attacked and nearly killed by an insane ex-student of the 3rd Hokage. This was not okay. So, what else happened? I asked. Ino sighed. Anyway, when we got here, there were 2 other teams that had already arrived before us. Those creepy guys from the sand were first, and then Team 8, Kurenai's team, also got out pretty quickly, because Shino used his bugs to shield them from the chakra-eating vines. So they were already out of the way when Orochimaru finally attacked. We're in the little base at the top of the canyon. They took us up there when we made it out of the maze, you see. You didn't run into any other trouble along the way? No. Hinata's Byakugan told us the paths to avoid, and Naruto's air jutsu kept the worst of the drugged gas away. Not that we needed it. I think they stopped releasing the gas after the snakes attacked. There was still some residue hanging around though, so the wind jutsu cleared out the paths. But other teams weren't so lucky. You were right, most of them eliminated themselves with infighting shortly after the drug was released, Ino told me. I closed my eyes, thinking. So, Orochimaru, Ino wrung her hands uncomfortably. When he, I don't know, died, the ANBU squads that came later to take him away, they said something about a network being down, probably our wristband things, and I saw a couple ANBU trailing behind us as we made our way here, but we didn't run into any other teams on the way thanks to Hinata, so I guess we just got an automatic pass for making it in on time. I think they just stopped caring about the wristbands since the whole sealing system was apparently destroyed. Really? He's dead? Just like that? I asked. But he was totally destroying us back there. What happened? After I got knocked out? I don't know. I mean, I hope he's dead, but well, that ANBU used the replacement jutsu on you, right when Orochimaru was about to bite through you to get to Sasuke-kun, and he took your place instead. I saw him stab Orochimaru through the head, except that he didn't die. Like, he got stabbed straight through the mouth and everything, but he still kept on talking. And then something weird happened, and then I couldn't really tell what went on after that. It all happened so fast, she said, her words coming out faster and faster in her nervousness. One moment, Orochimaru was, trying to kill all of us, and then the next, he just collapsed. Huh, I muttered to myself. So it did work after all. What do you mean? Ino asked. It's hard to explain, I said. Basically, when I used the cage main, I wasn't just trying to pin Orochimaru down, otherwise I could have held him for a bit longer. I was using my shadow to conduct chakra between the seal on my wristband and Orochimaru, because the easiest way to break out of a shadow bind is with reverse chakra cycling. So, I channeled my own shadow across the wristband, using the chakra block to control the direction of flow of his chakra. It hits the seal, rebounds, and travels back down the shadow over to him, completely destroying his chakra system, Ino deadpanned. And you thought to attempt that, without even knowing anything about sealing or testing it beforehand? You're insane. I prefer creative, I mumbled. Well, I'm glad you're happy with yourself for getting that to work, Ino said, because you ended up taking out the rest of the sealing network in the process. I thought it was already taken out by Orochimaru, I said. It was only blocked. They were working on fixing it, and then you just burned through the whole thing. Look at that, she said, pointing to a stripe of ash on her wristband. It's completely unsalvageable. Because of you. In my defense, I didn't intend for that to happen, I protested. The sealing network, I mean. The chakra stuff, yes. I don't know enough about sealing to say anything else. But that shouldn't have killed him. At least, not by itself. I don't know what happened after that. The ANBU that substituted you with himself, he told us to all leave. So I never got to see what he did. I'm guessing he took care of it. Ino closed her eyes. But before we left, that guy, I think he got bitten. By Orochimaru. When he drew his sword and stabbed Orochimaru, Hinata said she saw this weird shape form on his shoulder, and then Orochimaru started screaming about cursed seals or something. I sat up and scratched my head. Cursed seal? Don't ask me what that is, Ino held up her hands. I don't know. They didn't explain. It's a seal, and it's a curse. Cursed seals. I knew what seals were, but not cursed seals. Sealing, in general, was a ridiculously complicated and confusing ninja art, made even worse by the destruction of Whirlpool. Though versatile in theory, its applications were usually limited to all but the best users, some of whom spent their whole lives researching it. Most of all, it required a great deal of patience and critical thinking skills. To most nin, who were only interested in getting strong enough to survive, less about learning jutsu theory for the beauty of it, the effort was great and the payoff was little. Even those who were interested in it didn't start out with sealing right away. They went for techniques more useful in the field, like the 3 cores, ninjutsu, genjutsu, or taijutsu. The days for fighting with holy sealing were long past, if they ever even existed. What happened to that ANBU? I asked. I don't know either, Ino said. Like I said, we left as soon as he told us to. Oh. I rubbed my eyes. Was he still alive though? Yeah, I mean, he was walking and talking all right, Ino said. Oh, hey there, Naruto. Naruto bounded into the room, still as cheery as ever. I was glad for that. As long as Naruto could still stay upbeat, we'd be okay. Is he awake? Naruto asked, peering around Ino's form at me. Oh good, he is. Shikamaru, you wouldn't believe what happened after that. It sucks that you missed it. Anyway, I already told him, Ino snapped. Go sit down. We all need our rest. We'll be stuck here for the next day while we wait for the other teams to finish. Fine, Naruto said, a forced smile on his face. He wasn't any happier about our situation, either, but he was unusually good at disguising his pain with cheerfulness. It seemed like all those years of being the class clown had paid off, after all. Isn't it awesome, though? We're the 3 rookie teams, and we all made it through first. Yeah, don't let it get to your head, Ino smiled. Naruto plopped down on the bed on the other side of the room. I walked past Team 10's room on my way back here. Sasuke's awake, Ino. If you want to go visit him now, maybe later, Ino whispered. Shikamaru, you sure you're okay? I'm fine. Just tired. I turned to look at Naruto. How's Sasuke? Doing great, actually. He woke up shortly after we made it to the base. He's fine, no injuries or anything. I heard him laughing with Choji and Hinata. Were my ears working properly? I'm sorry, Naruto, did you say Sasuke was laughing? I'm not making this up. Not a snort or a chuckle. Full-out laughter. I don't know what Choji or Hinata did to him, but he's no longer the Mr. Grumpy Pants we knew from the academy. He sat down on the side of my bed. Feeling better, Shikamaru? Yeah, I guess. If you could ignore the chakra exhaustion and all that. It was a really uncomfortable experience. My whole body felt like it was stuffed with foam packaging peanuts. I glanced around the room again. The bed I was lying on, more of a cot, really, was the only one in the room, which was, in truth, about as big as a closet. A regular closet, not one of Ino's closets. I felt a little bad, taking up all the space. I tried to sit up, but as soon as I moved even a little bit, the room started spinning, so I was forced to lie back down and stay still to curb the nausea. Stay still, Ino ordered. What part of you have chakra exhaustion and need to rest, don't you understand? Honestly, where are you guys sleeping? I asked. Ino shrugged. We were just planning to take over the hallway. There's enough room for all of the rookie 9 if we put our bedrolls down the right way. Anyway, the only other people here right now are those kids from Sand. You know, those kids, and they took over the lounge in the back. The Sand kids. The Suna economy tanking. The suspicious-looking candidate. Then this attack. So much going on, and all of it seemed to fit together sensibly somehow. It was just a matter of why. I knew these events were related, just not how. I sat back and thought about what I knew before the exams compared to now, and most importantly, the reason why we had been entered in the first place. Why? Why were we even here? Though getting a rank advancement sounded like a great honor, it did come with consequences. The same as graduating early. I learned too much about that from my father. The councilman. What did he want? What could he do that would force the Jonin instructors to take such drastic action, to enter all of their precious clan heirs, still rookie genin, into a potentially deadly competition, all at once? It just didn't make sense to me. None of it made sense, and that really annoyed me, because things were supposed to make sense. These people, from the Hokage down to individual team leaders, they were the ones making the decisions that would affect my life. Would they really be so careless to risk the lives of basically all the clan heirs of Konoha, just for a few rank advancements that no one would care about in a few years? I didn't want to admit it, but I really was scared. For my own safety, and for that of my friends. It wasn't the same type of oppressive fear I'd felt under Orochimaru's killer intent, or the fiery type of fear that automatically reared its head in anyone fighting for his life. It was a more subtle sort of terror, the anticipation of the uncertain. The question, what will become of us? And the even worse one, is it even in our control? I like to think that I had some modicum of control over my own life. But this, all this, it was making me reevaluate. How many of my choices were my own, really? Already, I was planning the snooping I'd do as soon as I got home. Of course, Naruto just had to go and interrupt my precious silence with his noise. Hey guys, I was kinda thinking about this before, but you know that ANBU guy that totally saved your life back there, Shikamaru? Yeah, what about him? Ino asked, her face showing that she, like me, was still trying to wrap her mind around a laughing Sasuke Uchiha. I'm sure he's fine. Konoha has the best medics and sealing masters of any hidden village. Kakashi-sensei said so. Funny you should mention Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said, because, well, before, when the snake attacked us, one of my clones was up there, investigating, before it got dispelled. Anyway, that ANBU guy, with the same mask, was using some weird lightning jutsu. And your point is, Well, we don't know any other really good lightning users in Konoha besides Kakashi-sensei now, do we? So, is it just me, or am I making too many leaps here? Why are you looking at me like that, Naruto, Kakashi-sensei is a Jonin teacher of a participating team. That's not allowed, said. Besides, he quit ANBU a long time ago. He said he was never going back. For all we know, that guy could have just been someone on Kakashi-sensei's team that he taught a lightning jutsu to. Anyone can learn a ninjutsu technique, even if it's not their affinity. And maybe Kakashi-sensei met up with him later, and told him to keep an eye on us, or something, if anything happened. Ino trailed off. I mean, Kakashi-sensei wouldn't leave us and go back to ANBU, right? He already quit. We were all silent at that. On the inside, I seriously hoped that it was just a mutual acquaintance, and that the person who had gotten a cursed seal on himself on my behalf was someone I didn't know. Because the only alternative was unimaginable, that Kakashi-sensei was now out of commission somewhere, was something that Orochimaru made stuck to him. But logically, there was no other explanation. Kakashi-sensei had been a tester for the first phase, even though that was 20 different ways of illegal. After all, we, his team, were competing in that same exam. I was pretty sure the Sandaime knew he had been planning this, and turned a blind eye to it. So Kakashi-sensei had been privy to more information about whatever Orochimaru had been doing. And he infiltrated the exams to protect us, which left the question, why had we been entered in the first place, if he knew it was going to be dangerous enough that he'd have to follow us around? It seemed like every answer I came to only caused more questions. I needed data desperately, but I didn't have any. I looked back at Naruto and Ino. They were locked in an awkward silence. I wondered if I should tell them about what I had deduced. I didn't want to lower their spirits, but would it be kinder to let them find out later, or give them the harsh reality now? I ended up asking, very vaguely, can't we ask someone, about him? I tried. Naruto gestured to the door with his chin. No one knew anything about it. None of the Chunin examiners know anything about the ANBU that were around. There weren't supposed to be any ANBU proctoring a Chunin exam. It's designed and administered by Chunin, with Jonin as the head examiners for each section. None of them really have any contact with the outside world, or ANBU, until the phase is over, because they have to be around here, watching the examinees, at all times. They said it was they're not allowed to speak with anyone while the exams are still going on, Ino said. There's all these really strict rules against people on the outside helping the genin inside cheat. Plus, apparently all of the Chunin and Jonin like to place bets on the exams and stuff, and they don't like anyone getting any insider info. So even if they wanted to ask someone on the outside about Kakashi-sensei, they couldn't. I guess we'll just have to wait until this phase is over and they let us out. Naruto shrugged, trying his best to be nonchalant. Yeah, I lied. Kakashi-sensei is fine, we hoped. ANBU Emergency Medical Services. This is not good, the Sandaime Hokage thought. This was not how it was supposed to go. He had been prepared for sabotage by Sand. He had not been prepared for Orochimaru also joining in on the fun. Kakashi. Hiruzen felt his stomach drop. This is all my fault. The fact that things worked out as well as they did, which wasn't very well at all, but once again, it could have been much, much worse, seemed unreal to him. How is he? Hiruzen asked. Alive, but we're not sure of anything beyond that, said ANBU Raven, the resident sealing expert, as Jiraiya wasn't around. The seal was designed specifically for Sasuke Uchiha, not him. His chakra type and DNA markers are incompatible. The Sandaime steeled his face into a grim frown. What effects will that have on him? Right now? We are not sure, ANBU Raven admitted. We've done our best to stabilize the seal, slow down its effects, but what? The sealing specialist trailed off uncertainly. Well? The Sandaime cocked an eyebrow at him. Sir, ANBU Raven answered finally, there seems to be Spit it out, the Sandaime urged. Well, this isn't definite, but there are traces of Orochimaru's. Well, ANBU Raven stuttered. How should I put this? I don't know how to describe it, exactly, but his presence is there. Not even his chakra, but something more sinister. It's like a controlling factor, basically. It's almost as if his mind is in that thing. Hiruzen paled. Oh God, no. Oh please, God, no. Orochimaru, please tell me you didn't. Take me to him, the Sandaime ordered. Swallowing uncomfortably, the ANBU soldier did as he was told. What Hiruzen saw confirmed his greatest fears. So this is how you've been making yourself immortal, Orochimaru. He straightened his back. Recall Jiraiya immediately, he barked. And tell him that it is a direct order. An emergency. Yes, sir. Place Kakashi Hatake under the strictest level of surveillance in the meantime. Under absolutely no circumstances are you to let him out of sight. Understood, sir, and relay to the general troops that there has been a change in plans. Orochimaru will not stay dead, but as long as he is out of commission, we might as well start moving against him. NBU Emergency Medical Services. Admittedly, Jiraiya had always, from since he was a small and stupid boy, to the amazingly handsome and unforgettable shinobi he was now, had that annoying type of super macho persona. You know, that guy that always pretended that he was tough enough not to need any help. Yeah, that guy. Come to think of it, all the cool people acted that way. That really funny Uchiha boy that used to follow Minato around all the time and pretend he wasn't hungry when Kushina came around with food was like that, too. Not that it helped him any, in a situation like this. Effing Kakashi. The brat never knew when to stop, did he? Like teacher like student, and like father like son, Jiraiya mused. What sort of trouble did you get yourself into this time, Shikamaru? Took a curse seal in the shoulder to save one of your students, did you? You bleeding idiot. You do realize it's going to be even harder for me to cure it now? If that mark had made it to the person it was intended for, he at least would have a good chance of living when I finally got to him with the seals. With you, I'll have to waste my time trying to save your life before I even think of sealing away the mark. Stupid ungrateful little brats these days. Always trying to make the world a better damn place. Except Sakuma was a few months older than me, I think. So maybe not little, in his case. But still. Ungrateful little shits. Poor little Yahiko. Nagato. Conan. Jiraiya shook his head and just picked up his own speed. He might be aging, but he was in no way old, damn it. In the end, it had been Sakuma who had been a greater friend to him than Orochimaru, and damn it all to hell if he was going to let Sakuma's brat, who was actually pretty damn funny as long as you weren't the butt of his jokes, die at the hands of that thing. He arrived in Konoha before nightfall, and almost immediately, a team of ANBU had descended upon him like a flock of vultures and escorted him to the isolated little compound where they were housing Hatake. One look at the curse seal, and his toes went numb. The inky black marks had spread from the shoulder. They were now bleeding down all the way to the upper arm, and curling around the left side of his neck and face like a diseased fungus. Kakashi was fighting valiantly. He really was. Even without the Sharingan, Jiraiya could see the bright white lines of his chakra pushing as hard as it could back against the poison in his veins. Unfortunately, this reverse reaction was exactly what was hurting him. The war going on within his body was just too much for the thin walls to withstand, and each contact point was decaying his chakra pathways just a little bit more. Orochimaru really had done a number on him. Either way, he lost. If his chakra didn't fight back, the poison would gradually take control over his body. But when he did, the stress would destroy the chakra pathways themselves, allowing the poison to come forth anyway, albeit at a much slower rate. It was the classic issue of incompatibility and rejection. Just like organ transplants and tissue donors had to be checked against the receiver, so did, well, sealing grafts. Whatever the hell Orochimaru was playing around with now, there was no way any regular sealing team could have done anything to prevent this. Not that he was insulting their skills. They were good men and hardworking people, and they had taken the best course of action that had been available to them: stabilize, slow, and wait for better help. It was thanks to their work that the curse had not already spread all over the body so that it was beyond even his help by now. They had even done their best to prevent, or at least delay, the total deterioration of the boy's chakra pathways, for which Jiraiya was glad. But their power could not match that of a Sannin. What is it, Jiraiya? Sarutobi-sensei asked. Jiraiya looked up gravely. 90%. That had been the rate of failure for this particular experiment. 90% of Orochimaru's test subjects. There really was only one proper diagnosis for what he had just seen. He's dying.